Hey everybody, this is Eric with the Drum Addict. Thanks for stopping by for another episode of the Backbeat. I've got my friend Sacha with me, Virtua Drummer. Sacha, how's it going, brother?
Yeah, good mate. Good mate. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So excited to have you on. I know we kind of, we'll exchange comments back and forth with one another. It's been super cool. You've been playing out a lot, which has been
Yeah.
super cool to see. So let's kind of jump off of our my normal routine. Let's start talking about the live gigs because you were doing a bunch of YouTube videos, you in your studio, and then you're traveled around with this band. Tell me about how that got started.
Yeah. So I mean, a lot of people know the backstory that, I gave up drums 12 years ago. Then obviously got back into it not long, before I met you. Because I mean, I have to acknowledge this, that you were one of the first people to give me a shout out when I started doing the YouTube cover
Oh,
stuff.
sweet.
Um, so so I basically started to do the YouTube cover stuff, and the main reason for the YouTube covers, and I've said this to other people before, it's nothing new, is mainly as like a resume, as you would call it in the States, like a CV. Because my objective has always been to get into another band, if the YouTube covers thing went well. And then obviously, as you know, I continued doing the covers, continued building the confidence up again, bought an acoustic kit, and then 4 months later got into a band. And the great thing is, and obviously I'm in another band as well, so I'm in two bands. And then and the great thing about that is that all came about because of the YouTube channel. So, when adverts were put up looking for drummer, I would send them, clips of my drumming. They would see it and they would immediately, say, can you come in for an audition?
Nice.
And then you get the gig. And then it's sort of like, it's molded, it's switched over then into sort of live content. As opposed to stuff that I'm doing, on the e-kit. I mean, I'd like to get back to doing some covers on the e-kit, but the gigs have just been so busy, mate. You
Yeah,
know,
you've been playing a lot, which is great. And also that Tama kit is gorgeous. I love that finish on those. Very, very cool. Very cool. What landed you in Tama versus something else? What was what were the factors that led you to that brand choice?
well, I mean, I'd always been a fan of Tama. Basically, I mean, because I was a fan of Stuart Copeland. So that's how I landed into it. I mean, I sort of about 22 years ago, I bought a nearly new drum kit because I had this old Premier drum kit that I was using in this cover band that I was another cover band back then that I was in. It was getting busy, and the guys in the band were kind of like, Sacha, this Premier kit you've got looks a bit naff. It was something from the '80s with the big power toms. I'd had it.
Gotcha.
I'd had it since the early '90s, Eric. It was my first drum kit, and it just stuck with me. And they said, would you mind getting a new drum kit because it'll look better on the stage? So I decided I set aside a budget of £1,000, and I went to Birmingham Drum Centre, which is long gone now. And I was looking for a Premier, Eric. I was going to buy a Premier, but they said, "Oh no, we've got this Tama Star Classic Performer here." That was bought 2 weeks ago, but the owner brought it back because the color didn't gel with him. So he traded it in for a Premier. And I had a look at this Tama and I fell in love with it. So that was a Star Classic Performer. When those kits were quite something, that line of kit was like the second from their top of the range,
Right.
Now they use the name for a budget kit, you know what I mean? That's what they use that name for now, the Performer name. And then, of course, when I got back into it again and I decided I wanted to get an acoustic kit, I was looking again, what am I going to get? People I know, other drummers was, that I knew from years ago were saying, "Oh, get something different, get something like, natal or something, or natal or whatever." And
Right.
but I was just drawn back to Tama's again. And then Graham Russell Drums down near Portsmouth. I don't know why I'm pointing that way because I'm in Dubai, but
Down the
Graham
road, down the road.
Graham Russell Drums in Portsmouth in the south of England. They had one of the first Tama, Star Classic, because basically the Star Classic Performer of 20 years ago is now called the Star Classic Birch Walnut, right? That's basically what it's called now.
Okay.
And they had the first one of those in Phantasm Oyster, which is that color, in the UK. And they've been waiting a year for it because of COVID. It all got delayed. They had it for 2 days, and then I spotted it on their website, and there was they wanted £2,000 for it, but at the same time, this was the bank holiday weekend, public holiday in the UK, and there was a 10% off offer. So I got £200 off it. So it was just a no-brainer. I thought, I love the color. It's one of those love or hate things.
Sure.
And the price was right. And also, there's a sort of a hidden thing about it that someone I know years ago in that band, when I bought the Star Classic Performer all those years ago, the band leader was unhappy that I didn't buy a Ludwig Ringo kit in the oyster finish, right? And I bought this one in mind, thinking, oh yeah, this is funny really, because this is an oyster finish, but it's a good oyster finish. And so there was a little bit of that in there as well, and that was it, mate. Just sort of, I don't know. I just like their line of stuff. You know what I mean? I think it's good value for money, if I'm honest with you. So
yeah, absolutely. I've had 3 Tama kits. The first one I bought used at this shop in New Hampshire, and it was a 9-piece single kit. And I think it was the Tama Imperial Star series. So it was like 8-inch tom all the way down through 18-inch floor tom. It was insanely huge. And then the kit that I had in the studio was I want to say it's a Superstar Classic. So which is probably kind of in their mid-range stuff. But man, I still have got that kit over at church, and it just sounds great. Too. So yeah, so I've kind of gravitated that direction. I did go out of the box and do the Mapex thing on this kit. But I totally get it. And I love finishes that make that kind of, you go, oh, well, that is so cool. It's unique. It's like that. I think it's called Citrus Mod. Rich Raw Dog Drums has that on his Ludwigs. It's almost like a psychedelic looking thing. I just love it. I'm like, man, so your kid and that kid, I'm like, man, those are the neatest finishes. I just think they're so cool.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, the feedback I've got since I've been using it has been quite positive. Mainly people, a lot of women, a lot of females that, I don't know, walk past it when I'm setting it up in a pub or club or something like that. A lot of them will say that's a real sexy color, that is, and all that sort of stuff. So, it's that kind of, it's, no one's actually said to me, ugh, I don't like that. I can't deal with that. But like I said, I just liked it. I liked the color. And again, I was going to go crazy and go for a DW Collectors.
Okay.
But I don't know, it's like double the price, it was double the price for it, and you don't get much, for double the price, put it that way. I like toms, Eric. I like to have my toms, you know what I mean? So I like the 2 there, or the 2 and the 2 down. That's how I like it. And so Tama was it. And also the other thing I've noticed with this kit is, even if you don't know much about tuning drums, or you can't really be bothered to tune your drums, of all the recordings I've taken, even sometimes I sit there and think, my God, this tom is really out of tune. You know what I mean? It's like going boing like this, but when I play the recording back, and I think, Christ, they're massive. The sound coming from them is enormous. And we had our bass player's brother at his, I think it was his bass player's wedding or something. And obviously we played there. And his brother was a drummer, and they got on to do Comfortably Numb. He got on my drums to do Comfortably Numb because he asked if he could. And so they played it, and I was out in the audience. And I was out in the audience with a vocalist because someone else was singing it as well. There was another guest there that was singing as well. So I was sat out there with the vocalist, and I said, bloody hell, Chris, my drums sound enormous. They're not even mic'd. and it's a massive sound, coming from them. So I guess it's the old thing, isn't it? You get what you pay for. So
Right. I had in the past, I've had a couple DW kits way back. Pardon me. And I've talked with a few people recently that have said DW makes great stuff. So I'm not crapping on DW, but they've said that you're paying a lot just for the brand, of it, or, if you're living in the States, to be like, oh, made in the USA, which is fine, is great. But people I've talked with say, I'm not convinced I'm getting any better of a drum, for like $3,000 than I am getting it for $2,000 over here with a Tama or a Mapex. So what got you into playing the drums originally? I know you talked with Brian a little bit about this, but what was the genesis of your drumming journey?
Well, I think it's the same old story probably for a lot of people, Eric, in that I tried every instrument when I was a kid. My parents would buy me a guitar, buy me a keyboard, and then I'd just put them down after a month and never go near them. But with drums, I mean, my dad used to play the drums. Before he met my mum, he was in oddly enough, I mean, back in the late 60s or early 70s, I don't know the date, but he was in the RAF, the Royal Air Force, and he was in a Beatles cover band back then, which would have been quite something back then to do.
Yeah.
And basically they, the RAF picked them up and sent them around the bases to play. So there's that sort of connection there. I mean, he gave up once he had kids and stuff. So,
that's cool.
And then of course, I mean, I started getting interested basically when my dad started to buy CDs in the early 90s, compact discs of like Jimi Hendrix, Queen, the Beatles as well, and the Who, and for some unknown reason I started listening to the drumming more and more, particularly on the Jimi Hendrix stuff, the Mitch Mitchell's drumming, and I was like, wow, this is really groovy. I like this. I do like this. And also before that, as a kid, I was into a lot of breakdance music and hip hop and stuff like that, and I liked the beats. It was mainly because of the grooves. That's what I liked about that music, the grooves, like Run DMC, Roxanne Shante, Stetasonic, Public Enemy, really, really cool grooves. That was the kind of stuff I liked. So I came from that sort of background as a kid as well. And then basically I then started playing air drums at night, listening to the Who and stuff like that. And then I started bending my mum's knitting needles, by playing on anything I could play on. And then eventually, because they wouldn't buy me a kit because it was a lot of money. And they'll come like, not going to buy you. There's a guitar and a keyboard over there that you're not using anymore. But eventually, to cut a long story short, Eric, eventually they capitulated. Bought me an electronic thing. A Yamaha DD something, I can't remember, which had a foot pedal as well with it. I smashed that up within 6 months. Took that back to, I said this to Brian, but took that back to Tandy, where they got it from, which was the UK version of Radio Shack back then. And they gave me a full refund of what my parents paid for it.
Oh wow!
And I used that to go and buy my first crappy drum kit, which was off a kid that lived in a street down the road from me. He had this old crappy drum kit in his garage, and he wanted, I can't remember, 30, 40 quid for it or something. So I used some of the money to buy that, and use the rest of the money to buy, I don't know, cigarettes or something. And
you gotta budget it out.
Yeah, and then it just built up from there, Eric. It just built up from there. So
that's awesome. Who were some of you talked about, like Queen and the Who? Were those guys Keith Moon, and is it Roger? I'm blanking on the drummer for Queen, which I shouldn't be blanking.
Roger Taylor.
Right. Okay,
Roger
I was
Taylor.
Right. Were those influences for you?
Well, I mean, for as long as I can remember, my parents had always been playing Queen music, and they'd always been playing music by the Who. So I knew who these people were, but it wasn't really until I think when Freddie Mercury died, and the media was just plastered with Queen stuff, and there was Queen live concerts on the television all the time. And Roger Taylor was probably the one that pushed me over the edge to get into it, because with Roger Taylor out of Queen, especially the early days, quite a lot of rock drumming skill, but a lot of showmanship too, Eric. There's quite a lot of showmanship in there as well. I don't mean Keith Moon going crazy showmanship,
right?
I just mean like solid showmanship. And that was just like, I thought, wow, I like this. And then, of course, again with Mitch Mitchell, again that was another one. But Keith Moon as well. I mean, Keith Moon was another one that I was really into as well. But it was kind of one of those ones that you sort of knew someone like him was a one-off. Do you know what I mean? So but to be honest with you, Eric, it was, I mean, Roger Taylor, I was really a big fan of Roger Taylor out of Queen. I really was, because he was like a mixture of Mitch Mitchell and sort of like John Bonham's sort of playing style. That's the best way I can put it.
Gotcha. And I think it's interesting that you like drew a distinction between the kind of showmanship that Roger Taylor was delivering versus like Keith Moon. Definitely two different types of, like, you don't have to kick your drum kit off the riser to be a showman.
Exactly. Yeah.
And anytime I've seen videos of Keith doing that, I'm like, oh no, like, I mean, what were they growing on trees? Like, of course they had money, but like in sponsorship.
Well, of course.
I'm like, I wouldn't kick my drums over. I wouldn't be able to replace them,
Well, like, I mean, the thing is, I mean, the amazing thing with Keith Moon that I read much later is that every time they went on tour, he would be the only one that would come back nearly broke, as in no money, because the amount of damage he did to equipment and stuff like that, and the amount that it cost to replace equipment, and also the amount of fines they had to pay because of his antics and stuff like that. So he'd be the one, they'd go and do a world tour, massive selling out stadium world tour, and he would come back with like $100. That's all he's got left after all the money's been taken out of all the destruction and everything.
Oh man.
It was just, amazing story behind that guy, an amazing story behind him. So
yeah. Oh, that's, I hate to hear that. I didn't know that there was so many, so much monetary value was assigned to that. Just in terms of drum kits was all I was thinking, but you're like, oh yeah, I guess all that other stuff makes sense too. And it's like, man, that would suck to work that hard to be part of something that iconic and then have nothing to show for it.
Well, they were saying in the States, one of the things that he did in America, a lot of the hotels, the Holiday Inn and stuff like that, because I think they got banned from the Holiday Inn in the States, but he was like shoving fireworks down the toilets and stuff like that. But of course they would have to pay for the damage done to the plumbing system because of that. And right. It would run into the thousands, Eric, and it would come out of his pay. You know what I mean? It would come out of his
right.
So yes, I mean, there's a documentary on YouTube. I can't remember what it's called, but it's probably the only documentary on Keith Moon which explains it. And you kind of sit back, Eric, and you think, yeah, it was funny to watch. It's funny to read about it, but now what the actual monetary damage was.
Yeah,
the fact that he was nearly bankrupted by many times by the antics he got up to. You kind of like, yeah, it's not so funny now. I won't kick my drum kit over them.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Not just I could damage the stage. I could, I just think that's so funny. I recently watched. Speaking of antics, the I guess we call it a biopic, The Dirt, about Motley Crue, that was on Netflix, and I was like, man, I've never gone to a hotel and been like, you know what, I'm gonna throw the TV out the window, or I'm gonna blow up the commode with fireworks. But it's just so interesting to me. Like some of these guys' stories, I'm like, man, I'm exhausted just listening to it. Like hearing about it. And I don't know if that's because I'm sneaking up on 50 years old, or if it would have exhausted me in my 20s thinking about all these antics. When did these guys sleep? Like to have the
that's the
energy.
thing. I mean, the thing is behind all the antics, there's this terrible thing called administration. Someone's got to pick up the bill. Someone's got to pay the court fees because they got sued as a business. They would get sued for whatever they did. So someone's got to pay it, and the money's got to come from somewhere, and it comes from their pockets. You know what I mean? But that's the bit they don't tell you, Eric. That's the little bit they don't tell you. Oh yeah, well we blew up a room in a hotel, but we're not going to tell you we got sued for $1 million for doing it. And of course the insurance companies. The insurance companies then wouldn't go near them. The insurance companies would start saying, "Well, we're not insuring these tours now because you're just a bunch of muppets. It's costing us too much." So yeah, I mean, I watched. I'll tell you what, Eric. On the way over here, I watched Elvis with Tom Hanks in it.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if you've seen that yet.
I have.
There's that bit in it I found interesting where they said. I think someone one of Elvis's friends said to him, he said, "Oh, we get offered, $1 million to do a tour or something, but the Colonel keeps turning it down." And they're all going, "Yeah, why does he keep doing that? Why is he turning down $1 million like this?" And then I think later on in the film, it comes back up again. And Tom Hanks then explains to Elvis, "Well, they may be paying us $1 million, but the tour is going to cost $5 million." And also something like that. And then he explains all the stuff that's involved in the tour, who they've got to pay and all this sort of stuff. And he's kind of like, if you accept these offers, you're going to be bankrupt. And it's like, oh, wow. Yeah. Someone's thinking about the administration side of it as opposed to,
right.
Oh, here's $1 million to get on the stage and sing a song, to do a tour or something or like that. So I just loved it. I loved the film. I watched it on the flight over here and I just thought this is a brilliant film.
I loved it too. I didn't know a lot about it going in, other than that Baz Luhrmann, Moulin Rouge and some other things. Like he's a really interesting director to watch visually. He does some really neat things with cinema. But I thought Austin Butler and Tom Hanks were outstanding.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I absolutely loved that film. It's one that I've been wanting to have Loretta watch because I went and saw it with Mom, and because Mom loved Elvis, when she was younger, and so she was like, "Oh, this is awesome!" She loved it. So I was like, "Oh, Loretta will dig this. It's really cool." Anyways, but yeah, you don't think about the if you're not the one that's that has to think about, all the nickels and dimes that are going to be associated with something. A dollar amount like $1 million sounds like a lot of money,
but exactly.
And that's all most of the time, like, right. If somebody offered me $1 million, my first thought would be $1 million.
Get it.
Yeah. Let's do it. It wouldn't be like, well, wait a minute. Is it going to cost me 5 times this much to make this thing happen?
Well, that's what they say, and that's why you need. That's why these bands need. I guess what the story about. Everyone thought the Colonel was a nasty man, but in reality, he was. It sounds like he was just a businessman that was trying to keep the business going, and not let it go bankrupt. And so I just thought it was good. I thought, well, that's a good way to look at it. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I'll tell you my favorite scene from that movie. I didn't realize how punk rock attitude-wise Elvis was, because now you listen to his music and you see his videos and it seems so tame, But back in the day, in his heyday, like he was controversial, with his music and his dancing and and what have you. But the scene where the police have a presence at this show, and one of the officers tells him, as long as you don't so much as wiggle a little finger, everything will be fine. And so he gets up on stage and he just holds his hand up, and I'm like, oh, that was so epic. Good. Who knew?
That was good, yeah.
Who knew? And also where his musical influences came from, like it was just such a neat thing, and how he appropriated that into kind of his own thing. It gets lost in modern music, understanding why Elvis, bands like well, Elvis and like the Beatles and the Who, like why they were so, why they changed what was happening. You know, it's easy to just take it for granted here in 2023, forget about all of that.
Oh, yeah, the foundation of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, like I said, Matt, I watched it because I put it on and I thought, oh, yeah, I bet this is gonna be a load of crap. But I was just pleasantly surprised, mate. I really was. So
Yeah, same. Absolutely. Well, let's talk about I wanted to talk just briefly about your visit to Menorca to see David Pena. That was so cool. And I told David when I talked with him at the end of 2022, I was like, I'm just a little jealous. Like you could live in such a cool place. And he's like, well, you're always welcome to come and visit, you know. But that was cool. So how did that come about? And what was that experience like for you?
well, actually, that just going back to what you just said there. It was funny, really, because I did ask him when I was out there. I said, "Your wife's not worried that all these foreign drummers are going to start turning up at your house?" You know what I mean? It was quite funny, but no, what it was. So basically, I had a lot of air miles that were built up before COVID hit, and then obviously once all the restrictions were fully gone, the next problem was that if I didn't use these air miles, I was going to lose them. So I was planning a couple of trips to some places, and sort of like I'd been to Menorca years and years ago. I had a bit of a crap holiday there with an ex-girlfriend. She just drove me crazy. She just really did when we were out there. So but I said to David, I said it'd be nice to come back, visit Menorca and leave, feeling that was a really good time I had out there. And then when I was looking for places I could go, one of them popped up, on the British Airways website, was basically with the air miles, you basically take what they offer you. Do you see what I mean? You can't just go, right, I want to go to New York, give me a free seat. No, it doesn't work that way. It's reward flights that you have to search through. Some of them are just absolute rubbish. But one that I came across was to Barcelona. And I thought, hang on a minute, I could get a return flight here to Barcelona, and all I have to worry about is paying small change to get the island hopper from Barcelona to Menorca, which is like a 35-minute flight. And then I said to David, are you going to be in Menorca on these particular dates? And he said to me, and I know he said this because I've watched your video as well. And he said to me, well, yeah, of course I am. Where else am I going to be? And the reason why I asked him that is because sometimes he sends me messages saying, oh, I'm in Barcelona this week. Oh, I'm in Madrid this week. And I thought the chances are, for his work, for his work or for his family stuff. And I thought to myself, the chances are I'll go through the effort of booking this, and then he'll be kind of like, well, no, I'm in Barcelona that week. So that's why I asked him. But he sounded a bit like, well, of course, what are you asking for? So I said to him, well, look, I'm booking this to come over. I'd like to see some more of the island. But it'd be good if we could hook up and stuff like that. And he was like, yeah, do you want, and then he recommended a hotel, near to where he lived, which was really good because it's a bit of a minefield trying to, because it was out of season there as well, Eric.
Okay.
It was outside of the tourist season, so a lot of places were closed. But yeah, so I just booked it, and the next thing you know, I'm there, and we meet up with one another at the hotel. He came over to the hotel, and then we met up, the next morning and stuff like that. I'd hired a car to drive around the island, so I was driving around the island like a nutter during the day, and then I think for 2 of the days, I went and hooked up with David. We were constantly talking and meeting up. The funniest was, I tell you what, the funniest was about the trip, and he laughed at this as well. He'll remember this, but when I was in the hotel and I went down on the first day that I was there, I went down to get some breakfast. The waiter sort of come over and says, he came over to me and says, yeah. And I said, oh, I'd like a full breakfast, please. And he was like, okay. And then he walked off like that. And I was like, oh, fair enough, yeah. and then David suddenly barged in to, to the hotel. He suddenly barged in, number one, to tell me that my parking was crap. Because I didn't realize I'd parked outside his kid's school. And he was saying, he says, you've taken up 2 parking spaces out there. You've got to move your car.
That's funny.
So onto the second thing that happened was, of course, he knew, because it's such a small town, everyone pretty much knows each other. So of course he started speaking Spanish to the waiter as he came in, because I think he said to the waiter, "Oh, that's my friend there. I've just come in to." So of course the waiter then realised I was his friend. And then after it, the waiter was like, "Oh, how's it going, mate? How you're all right like this?" So I told David about it. And he was laughing. I said, as soon as the waiter knew that I was friends with you, he was kind of the waiter was like, "Oh, is there anything I can get you?" And all this sort of stuff.
That's funny.
So I got a little bit of street cred by knowing David. So yeah,
that's awesome.
But then of course we met up and we did the live stream, and which was great fun. The whole thing was absolutely, the whole thing was very rushed, very compressed into a small amount of time. That we managed to do a heck of a lot within that small amount of time, even outside of the live stream, Eric. Because I went around there to meet his wife and his kids and have a coffee and stuff like that, and just talk about life in general. So there was a lot of stuff that was done in there, because I was in Menorca to be in Menorca, which it wasn't to hang off David's coattails. So I was driving around all day, going to different parts of the island and all that stuff, and then in the evening, then I'd see David and we'd have a chat and stuff. So yeah, it was a heck of a lot crammed into a small, a small space of time, and we did it. So
I love it, and it was such a fun live stream too. And the idea of trying to do all that live stream the way that David does it with Twitch, and even the way that Ash does it. I think they've figured out their system, but it seems overwhelming to me. I'm like, man, I'm lucky if I can just play drums decent.
Eric, tell me about it, mate. The amount of work he puts in, and it'll be the same with that. It'll be the same with Ash Wells as well, and anybody else that does this. The amount of work, I've seen David set up, with my own eyes, and what he's doing and how he's balancing everything. It's just amazing, Yeah. And he's hosting it, it's just amazing. So
yeah, he does. And he was, before he kind of left YouTube and went all the way over to Twitch, he was doing some of that on YouTube. And I was always like, man, I'd be like, okay, do I have the right mics on, or the cameras,
But when I arrived, I think he'd got some more cameras, and he'd got a new computer when I arrived, when I was there. So it was a bigger setup that he had. But the one thing, Eric, that really surprised me, and this is immediately said it to him when I went up there, I couldn't believe how, because his kit and everything, it looks quite big on screen, but when I actually saw it, it's all quite small and compact.
Okay.
And I was just like, wow. I said to David, I said, mate, you managed to give out the impression that it's such a big, everything's such a big setup. But it's not. It's all kind of compact and small, and it's just amazing how he produces it all. I mean, I was sat by him while he's on the controls. He's operating 2 different computers, a mixing desk, and switching between cameras. And
man, my head would explode.
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't be able to do it.
So yeah, mate, had a fantastic time. It was brilliant. So that's basically how that all came about. Very opportunistic moment. So
that's fantastic. And you get to, and it's cool. One of the things that I say this all the time, but it's true all the time, is one of the coolest things that's come out of this YouTube journey for Loretta and I, other than just how fun it is to play drums and make videos, but the unexpected cool thing that came from it was just all the cool people we've gotten to meet and connect with, around the world, not just in our backyard, but all over the States, England, and Spain and Germany and the Philippines, and like all over. It's just been a super, super cool thing. 15 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to have this conversation.
Well, this is it. So, I was bumping along the bottom on YouTube, and I think I'd spoken to you probably once. I think you came on, you commented on one of my videos, and you subscribed to me, and I subscribed back to you. And then I think you did a shout out video, where you mentioned, my channel. You just mentioned the channel. That was all. And then suddenly, there's like an uptick, an activity, cool. and you kind of like, wow, I've spoken to this guy a couple of times. We've just started talking to one another, and he just gives me a shout out, and suddenly it just bumps up. Suddenly, I suddenly know, I suddenly know more people. And I think the first person I came across, or who came across me, and I was hoping he would, I was sort of waiting for him, was Ash Wells. Because I'd already come across Ash, I'd seen his channel when I was thinking about starting a YouTube channel myself, and then Ash came across me, and then I can't remember. I don't think David did, but you were the second one who then came across, because you also did shout out videos. You see what I mean?
Right.
And then and then one day, I think I'd only known you in your channel for about a month. You do a video, and you do a shout out for me, and I was just like, wow, that's amazing. Here I am with 20 subscribers, and he's doing a shout out for me. It's brilliant. So yeah.
Well, I'm glad it, like, the whole idea is to try to like help, people kind of get a bump, in subscribership, and kind of get more plugged into the community. So I'm glad it did that. But now, so you just had 20 subscribers. I didn't look at it today, but if I'm not mistaken, you have well broken 2,000 subscribers now, right?
Yes. Yeah. But yes. I would say I got lucky with some videos that I did, that I didn't think would get anywhere, Eric. Do you know what I mean?
It's always those videos, right? This is crap, and it's the one that blows things up.
It's when I looked this morning, it was 2,180. This morning, basically, just to cut a long story short, I think last summer I was sat at home, trying to think of ideas for shorts, because I was starting to get into doing short videos. Mm-hmm. Because I'd released a few short videos, and suddenly they just bloody explode within 10 minutes. You know what I mean? It'd be kind of like, you release, here's me doing 15 seconds of Wipeout. Next thing you know, 10,000 views, 100 subscribers just from 15 seconds.
That's awesome.
So I started doing some stupid things. I was looking at TikTok videos of trending TikTok videos. And I don't know if you remember, there was those, on YouTube and TikTok, there was those ones where, I can't remember, where it's like a very, how can I say, well-endowed woman, who's like there with a gown on, and it goes chick, chick, bang, like this, Okay. So I started copying that. By doing, because people say, well, what's that symbol you use? And then I'd reply back with a short with my cymbal bag, and I'd go chick chick, and then I'd jump and then switch to like the like the Zildjian EFX in my hand, and suddenly 10,000 views, 200 likes or whatever. So I started doing that, and then I got a stupid idea to do 3 Phil Collins shorts. So one was the rollout of In the Air Tonight, so just 8 seconds, right? So when I checked that one, that is now at over 300,000 views, that one.
Wow.
And nearly 5,000 likes. And then I did the entire groove, which was 45 seconds, and that's at over 150,000 views.
Wow.
And then I did the start of Easy Lover, which is like another 15-minute video. And it's been those three, Eric. I mean, other shorts I've done have been picking up, good numbers, but it's been those three over the past 4 months that have been generating. I mean, at times it was like, because, it's over a 48-hour period in YouTube. So at times it's been like, 20,000 views in 48 hours.
Wow.
I mean, it's tailing off now. I mean, it's just been like 3-4 months of this. And then, an average of, Social Blaze said it was averaging 14 subscribers a day.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's flattening off now. It's, I don't know how much Phil Collins people can get, but it's tailing off. It's starting to slow down now. But when I did the videos, they did explode, and then they just dropped. And then suddenly, I think in November, they just shot up again. And it's been like that until I think about 2 weeks ago it started to drop off again. So even though I said this to Ash Wells, I said, even though it's over 2,000 subscribers, is it like 2,000 Phil Collins fans? I've suddenly got.
Or 2,000 people that just like that like that.
Well, there was that as well because I didn't do it like Phil Collins, did I? Because Phil Collins does it this, didn't I? So I was getting a lot of stick. I was getting quite a lot of abuse on the comments. And there was quite a lot of flame wars going on in the comments, which also included some well-known people in our community who were sticking up for me. By the way, they were sticking up for me.
Good.
Which is cool, which is very nice of them. But there was a lot of people that were like, "That's not the way how Phil played it," you know what I mean? And but at the moment, to be honest with you, when I look at the numbers, it's nearly 5,000 likes on it.
Gosh.
and 192 dislikes on it. So, and that's out of 300,000 views.
Right, that's not bad. That's a number we can live with.
That's the backstory behind that one, mate. So, and then it developed into Eric. It developed into basically recording my gigs and cutting shorts out of my gigs. That's what it turned into. That's what it's turned into now. Is actually watching my gigs and going, God, that's 15 seconds where I didn't make a mistake. Quick, get it. Put it as a short. Use that.
That's where we're going. Yeah, I love it.
So that's how that's developed, Eric. So
that is so great. What playing in a couple different bands and then the channel, what does the future look like for you? What are your plans for your drumming moving forward?
Well, I'm starting to try and get myself more out there playing live, because I think I think the greatest development for anybody when it comes to their instrument is playing live. It is, because I'm not taking them. I'm not dissing anyone or anything like this at all, but I think it's okay to sit at home doing your massive chops to a song or something, or on your own, with a camera in front of you. And I've seen a lot of that on Instagram and stuff like that. People doing these massive linear drumming chops and all that. And I think, well, that's great. But can you do it live? Can you do it in front of people when you've got the pressure of being watched? When you're under the cosh, and you've also got a band who are expecting you to be in time as well, to play in time. And that's why I say to people, people that I know, who say, I've had one or two people that said to me, "Oh, how do you learn stuff and all that? What's your technique and stuff?" And I say, well, the best thing you can do is get out there playing live as quickly as possible, because the sooner you get better to playing live and forgetting that switches off that there's this out there watching you, the bigger your confidence starts to become. And then the more whatever technique you're learning at home, whether you've got massive 300 BPM skills, doing a roll or something, it's going to happen live. You're going to do it live. But until you're sort of used to being under pressure, and not getting psyched out by being in a live situation where sounds are different, the sound of everything's completely different. It's going to be difficult to progress. So yeah, so that's what the future holds for me. I'm involved. I'm getting involved with another band who are more, how can I say, more of a ska act, ska reggae act, which
Very
is
cool.
massively outside my comfort zone, because I'm just used to rock and pop and stuff like that.
Right.
So I had a first rehearsal with them because their drummer's got an injury, so there's some gigs he can't make. So they've been looking for a dep. They found me, and I'll be getting involved with them soon. So there'll be some gigs coming up. They've got a brass section, trumpets, trombones, and all this sort of stuff. Doing Madness and all the specials and all that sort of stuff.
That's cool.
And so the future is probably going to be more of the same.
So we can look forward to more live videos of your drumming, which you do. And by the way, I haven't said this yet. You do a phenomenal job, like in your playing. I'm always impressed. And you were talking about like all these big chops, and those are great. But like, I've worked with a couple engineers that have said the drummer that can just, in the pocket for 10 minutes without getting off that beat is preferable to the big chops. But not only can you lay down some really cool chops, you're so solid in your groove. And I love that.
Well, that's I mean, thanks for that, mate. I mean, it's not, believe it or not, it's not intentional. Because when I'm at home playing on my own, I'm the sloppiest, busiest drummer you could ever imagine. But I'm getting back to the point that I made earlier on. When you're in the live situation, you're suddenly like, oh, right, okay, this fancy bit of chops that I did that fits in at home is not fitting into the live situation, because either I'm psyched up and I'm playing it too fast, or do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I tend to, I mean, there's some songs that I do with the band that I'm in where I just go completely insane. But there's other ones where I really have to sort of, be on top of it. Like I don't know, like Toto, Hold the Line. Those sort of songs, just really just keep it in check, because it's very easy. It's very easy for that song to get out of control speed wise. Because you got the piano, you got a piano in it going, and the whole song feels as if it's, you know what I mean? It's like, even live, Toto played it really fast, but so sometimes I get really confident at home doing stuff, but when it comes to the live situation, there's a bit more. Just
yeah,
you got to stay on top of this.
Yeah, that which makes perfect sense. And I think I even do that with my covers. Like I'm a meat and potatoes, guy, like in terms of my drumming. Also, I like real meat and potatoes, but like, but on the drums, I mean, like I'm not a flashy, fancy drummer, and I think it comes from that mentality of just serving a song.
Well, I mean, it's funny you say that, because there's a lot of, I mean, there's one drummer that, I listed out the drummers that I liked and stuff like that in the early days, but there was one drummer that I did come across, even in my early days, who I really, really liked, and I still like to this day, and that's Simon Phillips. I don't know if you know Simon Phillips. So he took over from Jeff Porcaro in Toto, but he's also played with like the Who and stuff like that as well. And when people say to you that, really decent drummers aren't busy, they're not busy, they're solid and all this sort of stuff. You ever listen to anything Simon Phillips does? He sort of proves that sort of like line of thinking completely incorrect. You know what I mean? Because he is a phenomenally busy drummer for what he does, and there's a lot of licks that I've stolen from him. That I drop in. Particularly. Particularly the triplets on the toms, particularly triplets, dropping in triplets on a straight 4/4 beat, or playing on the 3, you know what I mean? And that sort of stuff, just really throwing people like, when you do something and someone in the band turns around and smiles at you or something like that.
Yes.
That's like a Simon Phillips sort of approach, and I'm a big Simon Phillips fan. I really am a big Simon Phillips fan, and but there's so many different sort of influences in there to sort of keep on top of that. But I would just I'll say it again. I mean, for me, I say to any drummer who's picking up sticks for the first time, out there, I've said I've said before, the most important thing is really just learning, learning that live situation and the timing situation as well. The timing aspect of stuff.
Yeah.
And if you can get that down, then I think you'll be a very in-demand person.
That's good, and also encapsulates it. My last question, which is, what advice would you give to anybody starting to play the drums?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, this is the advice. I mean, I've been lucky enough to have two drum careers in my life. So I had my first drum career that I look back on and think I could have done things a lot better. And then I've got my second drum career, which relies on the first one, where I look back and think, what could I have done better? And now I'm doing it again. That's doing a new approach. And I think one of the most important things is, and you said it, Eric. You actually said it is playing. Playing to the music. Getting the mentality out of your mind that you've got to, prove yourself to be the best drummer out there. And don't get me wrong, Eric. That I've still got that mentality where I feel I have to do a huge role or something. But sometimes, but the most important thing is with it is when you're playing live. Is because how I record my gigs, because I put up the shorts, you see it. Well, you record the gigs, you watch. So I have to relive my gigs, and there's some good moments and there's some very bad moments where I think I watch. I'm playing a song, but I've suddenly sped up. Why have I suddenly sped up? I'm listening to it thinking, why have I sped up? At this particular part of a song, and I found it's usually because there's some songs where I start playing harder. Do you know what I mean? I start playing harder, and of course, the harder you play, the faster you go. So I'm kind of like, okay, I need to breathe a bit. I need to breathe, and I need to understand that my perception of time is different to other people's perception of time. So I need to understand that when I think I'm playing something okay, it actually might be too fast or just that bit fast. You know what I mean? So just breathe and just relax, and being a bit too slow is better than being a bit too fast, or too fast in general. So it's all about So it's I would just say it's all about if you do drum covers, great, because you're playing along to records. You're playing along to other timings and stuff like that. But I think if you want to get to the technique side of things, you mentioned it earlier on. Stone's stick control book. I can't say how important that book is. If there was one book that anyone needs to get, it's that book. Because of if you play it to a metronome and you work through the entire book with all the subdivisions, especially the subdivisions, that's going to make you such a fantastic drummer when it comes to timing. Even the first 3 pages, Eric, the single beat exercises on the first 3 pages, that's like weightlifting gymnastics for your fingers.
Right.
I probably practice Stone's book probably at least, I don't know, half an hour to an hour a day, just to a metronome, and you can tell, especially when you do it on the day of a gig. If you spend 2 hours on Stone's book and then you got a gig, you can, your fingers, you feel like Superman.
That's cool.
All that sort of stuff. So there's just, the thing is with drumming is it's not, and it's with every instrument, it's not rocket science. It's what you put into it. What you put into it is what you get out of it. And, when you actually watch these guys, I saw an interview on YouTube this morning of this fantastic guy saying how he does these double stroke rolls, and the sticks are going up here like this, right? And everyone's like, "Oh, that's fantastic! How'd you do that? You must be so talented." And I'm kind of like, "It's not. The dude's probably been practicing like doing that for years at 4 or 5 hours a day." Right. You look at Vinnie Colaiuta, you look at Travis Barker out of Blink-182. Yeah, those guys they practice hours a day, hours and hours and hours and hours a day. I mean, I think Vinny Colaiuta, I saw in an interview, he said that he practiced, you know, in his heyday, 8 hours a day. He would practice
Wow.
8 hours a day. And Neil Peart or Peart, sorry, he said in an interview, make sure you play every day, because if you play every day, you'll become a pretty good drummer. Do you see what I'm saying, Eric?
Yeah. There's a connection to the work that you put in, a direct connection to the output you get.
You just hit the nail right on the head. We're all, me included, and I'm not speaking on your behalf, but me particularly, I'm full of fantastic ideas. I'm full of new business plans. I'm full of billion-dollar ideas. They're there in my head, but I just don't put the work in.
Right.
You see what I mean?
I get it. Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat.
Do you see what I mean? If you, I mean, it's the human condition. You know, if you don't put the work in, then it doesn't happen. And I mean, that's, if I'm honest with you, Eric, and I don't know why, but Joey Clark appears in my mind when I think it's because he does the weights and everything, and he's just so good at everything. Do you know what I mean? You know, Joey. Joe. I think Joey was the person. I think it was Joey that found me because of your shout out. But Joey's the guy. If you look at Joey and, you know, look at the size of the dude and how fit and healthy he is and how great he is on the drums, and you look at the dude, and you think, well, he's got the ethic, he's got the work ethic. You know, you know, it's such a simple. It's a simple link, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's like I've joked with people before, and I was like, I want to look like Joey, but I don't really want to go to the gym. You know, well,
exactly.
And you're never going to achieve that fitness goal if you don't put in the work. You're never going to be a good drummer if you don't put in the work. Yeah.
But that's exactly what I say. I've had some drummers or new drummers, you know, I mean, not a lot. I'm not bigging myself up here at all. Probably single figures we're talking here. Some people have contacted me like over Instagram and said, I'm just starting, there was someone contacted me, a daughter was just starting to play the drums. I've been watching your videos. Have you got any recommendations or anything like that? And I just said, well, you know, because she was asking me about holding the sticks and, you know, what she should do and where her finger should be. And I said, she should just do what she's comfortable with, you know, and that's it. And then work on that, stick to that, whatever makes her comfortable. Because if it doesn't work out, it will work itself out. The work you put in, you know, I mean, if you,
right.
I mean, I remember someone saying to me, I remember saying to someone, I said last year, I said, if you're holding your sticks the right way, if you use Vic Firth, you should see the label or any stick. But with Vic Firth, you should see the American flag going around as you're playing, right? And he was like, well, how does that work then? How does that work? What is that? Is that French? Is that matched grip? Is it American grip? Is it traditional grip? And I said, no, it's just that you're not holding them too tight. That's all it is.
Right.
I said, that's it. Hold them how you want to hold them, but make sure they're rolling around in your fingers. And that means you haven't got a death grip on them. And that means you can get the rebounds and all that sort of stuff that you want to do. Oh. So you wouldn't recommend match grip then, or? And I'm like, no, you find out what it is that you want to do. But
what's comfortable for you.
Yeah, but you have to put the time in. If you only practice 5 minutes a day, it's going to take you probably 10 years to find out what you're comfortable with. But if you practice an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a day, or whatever, you're going to get there quicker. And Absolutely. You know, so that's why I say, listen to whatever record you want to, listen to whatever band you want to, whatever drummer you like, but just make sure you haven't got a death grip on stuff, and that you're relaxed, and that's it. And that's Relax. Really it. That's why I don't locally. That's why I don't do drum lessons, because, you know, I think with drum lessons, I think if you're into it, if you're really passionate about it, you will seek out what it is that you need to find out. And then perhaps when you get to a certain level, then you can approach someone of a very high skill to get that extra mentoring or whatever. But I just think at a low level, I know people say, oh, you should get a drum tune, and that's fine. No problem with that. But I had drum lessons, you know, 25 years ago. You know, he'd set me stuff to do. I wouldn't do it. Go back the next week, and you could tell he's getting annoyed with it, and you see what I mean. So, But without going on too much, Eric, that's basically that's my thoughts.
That's awesome.
Just before one interruption, sorry, Eric.
Okay.
I would just say with anything in life, there is no one there with a slide rule saying, "Oh no, you didn't do that right. This is the way you should do it." That just doesn't exist. The slide rule doesn't exist, right? You do how you want to do it, how you feel comfortable doing it, yeah. And what's important is you enjoy doing it. And if that's all there, it all just falls into place. So.
That's so good. Well, Sacha, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. This has been awesome. I've loved it.
It's been great fun for me too, Eric. And thanks for having me on, mate. I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm very honoured to be on here as well. Honoured to be up there with all the other great drummers that you've chatted to. So. Well,
I appreciate that. It's been my pleasure. And you guys, if you haven't already, go stop by Virtua Drummer. I'll put a link in the description below. Sub to his channel. Keep up with what he's doing. You'll love it. You'll learn something. It'll be wonderful. He's a great guy, a fantastic drummer. You guys, thanks for stopping by. We will see you next time.